If I may set the backdrop of my vocation story, I would always go back to the basic admiration that I had with these priests who are in the forefront, especially those who are working in the far-flung areas. My parents are Catholics, and they are, I would say, ardent Catholics that I grown up with, and I would see them really praying and had this devotion to the Our Lady. While admiring priests who are working sometimes alone in their lonely parishes or churches, I would see questions in my mind. How come these priests are devoting their time to this lonely and sad place, and yet they are happy? When I became a working student in the Augustine Recollect schools in Palawan, I also kept digging about this desire that I had. We used to pray and we used to practice trying to share about your own vocation story. And at the same time, I also learned that there are a lot of things to understand about my faith. One day, when I was cleaning that office of the principal, I stumbled on that yearbook that is indicated there, Seminario Mayor Recoletos. And so out of curiosity, I started to browse this yearbook, and I began to see some reflections. And after reading that, I had this in mind that the impact of reading tells me a kind of identification of what kind of life I'm going to lead in the future. Considering that before I became a student in the Augustine Recollect School, St. Ezekiel Moreno, then Blessed Ezekiel Moreno High School, I was already contemplating of entering the seminary. The only problem is that I don't know where, and I was thinking of my previous knowledge about the Comboni missionaries, how they spend their life in Africa and all that. And then comes my fourth year, this vocation director came, Reverend Father Chris Palomar, he was there, and we were practicing, preparing for the World Youth Day 1995. And so without hesitation, of course, with the sisters already knew about my desire, so they introduced me to Father Palomar. And so even before that, I would always go back to the way I was nurtured in my family, and they used to pray the Holy Rosary ardently. In fact, they are in Spanish, and sometimes the litany in Latin. I don't know, but I just followed, and I also find peace when I join them in their prayers early in the morning, because when we were in Albay, we are too far from the church to attend the regular Mass in the church. Of course, I also observed that we have this devotion to the pabasa. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Passion Bicol. We gather as family and relatives there, and we embrace that kind of spirituality as if we understand everything, you see. And sometimes this is a moment for us to be together. And then when I started also to extend my hand to charity, to extend my help in the local church, like going into the barrios, to the island to celebrate Mass, I volunteered to play the guitar, and these activities are actually nurturing my desire. It's like I identify myself as little missionary in that sense. And then truly enough, after my high school years, I was surprised to receive that note from the vocation director informing my parents and myself, "Congratulations, Abraham, you are accepted in Recoletos, Seminario Mayor Recoletos. Now it is changed as Casisiaco Recoletos Seminary." I was so happy. I don't know what to do. I just started to tell friends and my sisters My brothers, of course, my mother, who was then quite doubtful of my desire to become priest. And so, when I was in the seminary, I started to live and study and, of course, join the brothers. I find myself identifying myself with missionaries. Sometimes priests from Brazil or from Africa would come and tell stories. It was like a kind of inspiration and a kind of strength for me personally to also look forward to the future. And so I said, Lord, I want to become a priest, but a religious priest. Now I added to my prayer, Lord, I want to become a missionary. And so when Father General also started to ask all of us, who would know that all these seminarians would really go into the mission? But just the same, I was there raising my hand when he asked, who wants to go to Sierra Leone? Who wants to go to Brazil? So I would always raise my hand to groups when they say, I want to go to Africa. And eventually, after some time, of course, I'm talking of my theological years, still I have this in mind, my desire, and nurturing that desire that one day I will go there. And so when the ordination was approaching, I was surprised when the provincial asked me, Abe, where do you want to go? And so, without hesitation, so quick to answer, I said, I'm going to Sierra Leone, Father. So that was for me, the fulfillment of a dream or a desire. It is right there in front of me. And so, when I was ordained, and then when I first received the call from the Father Provincial, prepare your passport and visa. For me, I could say, Lord, this is it. This is what I was praying for, and here comes, I have to say yes. Well, life is not always as easy as we wanted it to be, because time and again you will experience trials and difficulties. I work as missionary. I was sent as a young priest, newly ordained priest in Kamabay, and of course, you can imagine the life there. Of course, the malaria, the poverty of the people, the suffering that they experience. When I was there, my first week, or let's say first month, for me that was a kind of heavenly experience in that sense. Why? Being able to live with these people that I could only have in my imagination, in my dreams, and I was there teaching them about God, catechizing the adult, and eventually I will be baptizing them in the next few days. For me, that was a kind of source of strength for me. Even if sometimes I experience this malaria for 3 days, 5 days. Our mission, we call it contemplation and action. It doesn't grow old. We have to look at it in a perspective that Christ is always reaching out. Remember, Pope Francis, in the premiere of his career as Pope, that was part of his agenda, to reach out, to touch, to heal, and become a shepherd. And for me, as I have said, this missionary charism of the order should always be part of our system, of our spirit, because this is the life of Christ, to reach out and to seek the lost, the least, and the last. To sum up, my sharing about my vocation is, I started it with my admiration to people working in the mission, in the far-flung areas. And then, of course, my family environment where I grew up, my parents who are so faithful and devoted to the teachings of the church and the Lord. And my desire that was fulfilled, and of course, with the help of prayers, that it was fulfilled. And then when I was sent to that particular mission, I thank God, because nothing is impossible with God. When you pray, when you try to submit yourself, your life, God indeed is giving that to you. And with that, I am thankful to the Lord. I am thankful to the Order of Augustine Recollects, and to the brothers who have helped, and to those who have inspired me in this kind of life. That's all, and God bless us all.